All right, strap in, everyone, because today we are diving deep into the Kalkiist Manifesto.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this one is a doozy.
It is.
You guys have sent this over, and it is intense.
It is.
This document claims it has all the answers to, like, ending poverty, like,
Yeah.
really changing how the global economy works, even ushering in this whole new, like, golden age for humanity.
Ambitious, to say the least.
Yeah, ambitious might be an understatement.
Yeah.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The manifesto, it says we need to completely ditch money.
Like, get rid of it.
Get rid of it.
Wow.
To get to this golden age.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like a complete, total overhaul of how we think about work, resources, even just like basic human nature.
And to even begin to understand, like, how different their proposition is.
Yeah.
You kind of have to understand the background that they're coming from,
Okay.
which is the Hindu idea of the Kali Yuga.
Okay.
So this is like the present age that we're in.
Yeah.
And it's all about, like, darkness, decline, and, like, tons of conflict.
Okay, so like the low point of like humanity's whole spiritual journey, and they're saying we are living in it right now.
We are.
Which, given like the state of the world, I don't know, it kind of makes sense.
Right. Like, you look around and there's a lot of evidence to support that idea, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So, okay, so we're in this like Kali Yuga,
Yeah.
like rough times.
It's a mess out there.
How do we get out of it? Like, what does the manifesto say?
So they say that the way out is to basically usher in this, like, totally new era,
Okay.
the Satya Yuga.
Okay.
And, like, you know, often this is described as, like, a golden age of peace,
Right.
prosperity, all that good stuff.
Right.
But here's the thing. You can't just, like, tweak a couple things here and there.
Right.
You need a complete paradigm shift.
Right. We've got to blow it up.
Pretty much
Start from scratch.
start over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the whole no money thing.
The big one,
Yeah.
moneyless society.
I'm going to be honest. I read that and my brain just like stopped working.
Understandable.
Like, how does that even function? How does a modern global economy
Right.
work without money? Like, that's the question, right?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's funny because there would be no $1 million in this society.
Right. Exactly. It's a very
It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah. So how do they even like propose we do this?
Well, the manifesto lays out this system where everybody gets paid in time.
Okay.
It's all about time-based wages.
Okay.
So imagine, you've got your doctor, you've got your teacher, you've got your sanitation worker.
Okay.
They're all earning the same wage, but it's paid out in time.
So instead of getting like dollars or euros or whatever, they get like
time, hours.
hours. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But before we get into all of that, like, the specifics,
Yeah.
why do they even think this is necessary? Like, what's so wrong
Yeah.
with the systems we have now?
Right. So the manifesto.
Does not hold back.
Yeah.
They call out capitalism, communism,
Yeah.
socialism as, like, completely flawed.
Yeah. They don't pick sides.
Nope.
They're just like, none of this works.
They're all out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say that. Fundamentally, all three of these systems,
Okay.
despite their differences,
Yeah.
all share a really, like, key flaw.
Okay. And what is that?
They prioritize profit and endless growth over human well-being and, like, just the planet's limits.
So it's not about people.
Not really.
It's about like this constant need for more.
It's all about profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're saying like, no matter how much we try to fix these systems, they're broken fundamentally.
It's broken at the core.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they're all going to fail,
They're going to fail.
what do we do?
That's where this whole moneyless society comes in.
Okay.
So they're saying, you know what, get rid of money completely.
Okay.
And it dismantles the core incentive that's driving all these problems.
So right now, like everyone's motivated by making more money.
Yeah, it's all about, like, how do we get more? How do we accumulate more wealth?
Right. And they're saying if we take that away,
Take it away.
then what? What happens?
Then we can start thinking about working for the collective good.
Okay. So we'd all be working for the betterment of humanity. I don't know. That sounds...
It's a little ideal.
That's a little idealistic.
It's very utopian.
Right.
It is. But
Okay, let's say hypothetically,
yeah.
we could pull this off.
Yeah.
What are the pluses? Like, what do they say?
Yeah, what's the upside?
What's the upside? Yeah, what problems are solved?
So they say right away it would get rid of poverty.
Okay.
Like, if everybody's basic needs are met
Right.
just by them contributing,
Right.
the idea of poverty just doesn't even exist.
Right. It just ceases to exist.
It's gone.
It's just not a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that.
Right.
Like, I can see how, at least in theory, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's not just like the bare minimum either.
Yeah. Oh.
They're saying like it would unleash all this potential in people
Okay.
that like we can't even imagine.
Because you're not worried about
Right. You're not worried about just surviving.
everything ends meet. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not living paycheck to paycheck so you can pursue your passions.
Right.
You can really contribute and you don't have that like,
That pressure.
yeah, the pressure of money.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's really interesting.
So it's like, if we get rid of that basic need, then it's
Right.
like Maslow's hierarchy. Right.
Right.
Then people can move on to these, like,
Higher level needs.
yeah, these higher pursuits and actually, like,
Yeah.
make a difference.
Be creative. Contribute to society.
Right. And they're saying that's not happening now.
They're saying it's being stifled
Stifled.
by our current system.
Okay. It's a very alluring vision.
It is alluring, right?
But, like, let's get into the specifics. Like, okay, if I'm a doctor and I spend hours and hours and hours doing this very complicated surgery,
Yep.
how am I compensated for that time and that expertise?
So that is where this whole idea of time credits comes in.
Oh.
Instead of getting like, a salary every month,
Right.
you would earn a set number of time credits
Okay. Based on how many hours you work.
based on your hours. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I work 40 hours a week as a doctor,
40-hour work week.
I get 40 time credits.
There you go.
And then I use those to buy things.
Well, you're not really buying things.
Okay.
You're exchanging your time for goods and services that also have like a time value.
Okay. So instead of seeing a price tag,
Right. It's not dollars.
it'd be like, this costs 10 time credits.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's really interesting.
So time is like the universal currency.
Time is the universal currency.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm starting to get it.
Okay.
But then, like, what about
Yeah.
what about things like innovation? Like people who
How do you incentivize people to like push the boundaries?
right. Because if everyone's time is worth the same,
Right.
then why would I go through all the trouble?
Like, why would you go to medical school for years and years?
No, exactly. If I could just
Yeah.
like work at a grocery store.
Right. Exactly. It's a good question.
Yeah.
And it's one that the manifesto tries to address.
Okay.
So they say, because there's this baseline of economic security,
Okay.
people are free to pursue whatever they want
Okay.
without that financial pressure.
So it's not about like forcing everyone into this, like,
That's good.
everyone's the same.
It's not like a homogeneous, like
Yeah.
everybody's got to fit in this box.
Yeah.
It's saying, like, find what you're passionate about,
Okay. So whether that's brain surgery
whatever it is.
or baking bread,
Doesn't matter.
if that's your thing, like,
If that's what you're meant to do,
yeah.
do it.
And it's all
And you'll be taken care of. You'll have your basic needs met.
okay. Yeah.
You can contribute in your own unique way.
It's radical,
It is radical.
but also kind of makes you think, right?
It does. It really does.
Like it kind of gets at all of those.
It gets at the heart of, like, a lot of our anxieties about
your
work,
anxieties around work. Yeah.
about our purpose.
Totally.
Like, what are we doing here?
Right. What are we even doing?
What is this all about?
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It really is.
It's super fascinating.
Yeah. And it's not even just about economics.
Okay.
Like, it goes beyond that.
In what way?
Well, they talk about reimagining, like, our whole relationship with work,
Okay.
with each other,
Okay.
and just, like, the idea of what a good life is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It goes beyond that.
In what way?
Well, they talk about reimagining, like, our whole relationship with work,
Okay.
with each other,
Okay.
and just, like, the idea of what a good life is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And that brings us to like another really fascinating part of the manifesto,
Okay.
which is their take on the caste system.
Yeah. This is where I think some people might be like, hold on.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
when we think about the caste system, we don't usually think
Yeah.
like equality and progress.
It's not exactly synonymous with those things.
No, not at all.
Right. It's got a lot of baggage.
Yeah, it's got a lot of bad.
Historically,
Yeah.
a lot of, like,
Not great.
those hierarchy,
Yeah.
discrimination.
Yeah, exactly.
It hasn't been great.
So how do they even address that?
So what they argue is that, if you look at the original intention of the caste system,
Okay.
at least according to, like, their interpretation of these ancient Hindu texts,
Right.
it wasn't about, like, you're born into this thing and that's it.
It's not about your birthright.
It wasn't about social status. It wasn't about like where you came from. It was about recognizing that people have different skills,
Right.
different aptitudes.
Okay.
And that like a society needs all of those things.
So instead of being born into this one thing, it's more about like
Yeah, it's more about finding your place.
finding the thing that you're good at
Right.
and then doing that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like everyone has a role to play.
Right.
Whether you're
Teacher,
a teacher, an artist, a caregiver,
a leader,
Yeah.
a sanitation worker, like
Right.
all of these things are important for
Yeah.
a well-functioning society.
Okay, so I see what they're going for.
Yeah.
Like instead of it being about
It's about
like you were born and so you're at the bottom.
Yeah.
Like no, this is about
what are you naturally
good at.
good at? Yeah.
Yeah, what are your skills and talents?
Exactly.
And then everyone's has a role based on
like
that.
all of those roles are valuable.
Okay, but
Yeah.
then how do you prevent that from just
Right, because
becoming a new hierarchy.
Right, that's the big question, right?
yeah.
Because even if you say
Because even if
okay, we're wiping the slate clean.
you're starting from scratch,
Right.
how do you make sure it doesn't just
How do you make sure that like
become the same thing with different names?
it doesn't just like revert back to these old patterns
Oh, yeah.
of like power and
Yeah.
inequality?
Yeah. That's the tough part,
That's
right?
a huge challenge.
Because I mean,
And it's one that they acknowledge.
okay.
Like they say in the manifesto, this is something you have to be really careful about.
Okay.
Like you can't just say,
Right.
okay, we're a casteless society now.
We're all doing our thing.
Go do your thing. It'll all be fine.
Yeah, figure it out.
Like it requires
Ugh.
constant vigilance.
Okay.
It requires like
So it's about constantly checking in,
it's about
making sure that
yeah, are we living up to these ideals?
yeah, is this actually
Is this actually working the way it's supposed to?
right? And if it's not, like
Right.
course correcting, like
And if it's not, how do we
yeah.
adjust? How do we make sure that we're constantly moving in the right direction?
Okay, so it's about like
Because,
building in those
even with the best intentions,
yeah.
you can
people
will take
They're
advantage.
back into old patterns, yeah.
They'll find ways to,
Yeah.
exploit.
Yeah, if you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's about like constantly being aware of that
Okay.
and making sure that the systems are designed in a way that prevents that.
Okay, so it's about building a system that can like
Right.
withstand human nature almost.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the challenge, right?
Yeah,
It's like, how do you create a system that is idealistic in its goals,
Right.
but also realistic about the fact that
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
beings
People are messy.
were messy
Yeah.
or complicated.
Okay, so they're trying to walk that line.
That's the tightrope that they're walking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm guessing that's where like the whole spirituality part.
Right, because it's not just about
As in,
external structures.
Yeah.
It's also about like
right, because you can't just like
you can't just
create a new system
draw some lines on a piece of paper.
and then magically expect everyone to be different.
Right, exactly. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we've reorganized society,
Right.
but we haven't actually dealt with
But you're still greedy.
the underlying
on this.
human tendency
Yes.
that got us into this mess in the first place.
Okay, so how do they propose we even begin to do that?
Right. Well, that's the $1,000,000 question.
Right.
No pun intended.
Right. Exactly.
Because we're getting rid of money.
yeah, we're getting rid of money. Right.
But it's interesting, right? Because it's not just about external structures.
Yeah.
It's also about like
Right, because you can't just like
create a new system
draw some lines on a piece of paper.
and then magically expect everyone to be different.
Right, exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, we've reorganized society,
Yeah.
but we haven't actually dealt with
But you're still creating
the underlying human tendencies
Right.
that got us into this mess in the first place.
Okay, so how do they propose we even begin to do that?
Right. Well, that's the $1,000,000 question.
Right.
No pun intended.
Right, exactly.
Because we're getting rid of money.
Yeah, we're getting rid of money, right?
But it's interesting. They talk about how real change has to happen on like 2 levels,
Okay.
So, yeah, we need like systemic change, right? We need to change the structures.
Right, like the actual system.
The systems themselves. Yeah, but
That's not enough.
they say that's not enough. You also have to have this like individual internal transformation. Okay, so it's like a 2-pronged approach.
Exactly. It's a 2-pronged approach. You've got to like change the outside and the inside.
So what does that even look like? Like how do you even begin to do that?
Right. Well, they put a lot of emphasis on individual spiritual practice. So,
Right.
meditation, things like mindfulness.
Right, like self-reflection, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like really taking the time to like look inward
Okay.
and understand like your own patterns, your own kind of like, habits and
Your baggage.
yeah, your baggage, exactly.
Okay.
But they also acknowledge that like,
It can't just be that, right?
it can't just be that. Like, you can't just meditate your way out of climate change.
Right.
You can't just like, sit on a yoga mat and expect all the world's problems to disappear.
Right. It's not magic.
Right, exactly. So it's about like taking that inner work
Okay.
and then like bringing it out into the world.
Okay. So, like, how do we do that?
Well, I think it starts with like, really looking at our values. Like, what do we actually care about?
Okay.
Like, what do we prioritize in our lives?
So, like, is it all about, making as much money as possible?
Right? Is it about status? Is it about, having more stuff than our neighbor? Or is it about like...
Right. Or is there something more?
Is there something more? Exactly. Like, is it about connection? Is it about compassion? Is it about,
Immunity?
community? Exactly. Like, really thinking about, like, what kind of world do we want to live in?
Okay. So it's about changing our values. But, like, practically speaking, how do we actually do that? Like, where do we even begin?
Oh, I think, like, a good place to start is just being more mindful of our choices.
Okay.
Like, every day, we make choices.
Right. Even small ones.
Even small ones. Yeah, like, what do we buy?
Where do we shop?
Where do we shop? Who are we supporting with our money?
Okay.
Like, those everyday choices.
They add up.
They add up. They really do.
Okay. So it's like, putting your money where your mouth is kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it's more than that, right? Like, it's about how we treat each other, too.
Oh, absolutely. Like, being kind to each other, being compassionate.
Being understanding, even when it's hard.
Especially when it's hard. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, like, we're all, like, going through our own stuff.
Right. We're all fighting our own battles.
Exactly. And a little bit of kindness, like, it goes a long way.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like all of these small things that we do every day.
They create the bigger picture.
They create the bigger picture. Exactly.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot to think about.
It is. It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
It really is.
But it's also, like, kind of hopeful.
It is hopeful.
Right. Like, it's empowering in a way.
It is. It's like, instead of feeling like
just cogs in a machine.
Exactly. Instead of feeling powerless.
Right. Like, we can actually make a difference.
We have agency.
Even if it's just like... small things.
Small acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Small changes in our own lives. It matters.
It matters.
It really does.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. It's a good message.
It's a good note to, like, end on.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that, like, we're not just along for the ride. We're actually
driving.
We're driving. We're creating this thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, listeners,
yeah,
thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the Kalkiist Manifesto.
It's been a journey.
It has. It really has. We've covered a lot of ground, but of course, as always, this is just the beginning.
Right. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
So we encourage you to, take what we've discussed today, do your own research, keep asking questions.
Keep an open mind.
Keep an open mind.
Be open to new possibilities.
And who knows, maybe together we can actually create that more just...
And compassionate.
And sustainable world.
It's possible.
It is possible.
Yeah. We just have to believe it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Let's believe it.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.